Hey troops, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ryan, a former commando from the UK. Today we're going to get back into a reaction video, how Ukraine prevented Russia a day one win. Can't wait for this one, troops. If you can't too, please smash that like button, subscribe, and comment below for the algorithm. Let's get straight into it, troops. Boom. Oh, one more thing. If you want to join the Patreon, link below. There's some brilliant new features coming out, troops. The community there is fantastic. It's grown all the time. And every week we put ad-free, uncensored content out, things that we can't put out on YouTube. So make sure you join it, guys, all right? It's a great environment.
February 24th, 2022, 5:30 a.m. local. Russian President Vladimir Putin is going live to millions of people around the world, announcing a special military operation to denazify Ukraine. Even as Putin announces the beginning of his invasion, 24 Mi-8s are already penetrating Ukrainian airspace. The transport helicopters are carrying over 100 of Russia's most elite air assault troops, the very cream of the crop of the Russian military.
Yeah, cream of the crop in terms of what we heard and believed over the past 20-30 years. Didn't actually live up to the expectations, though, did they? We've seen some of the elite tank crews, some of the elite airmen, you know, really getting destroyed over Ukraine. They haven't really lived up to their expectations at all. And I was expecting them to have performed a lot better. Day one win for Russia was, you know, in my naivety, potentially on the cards. So certainly a week one, 1 week, you know, 1 month win. You know, that was something that everyone was fearful for, I think. Now that as times go on, we've been seeing a lot more of the footage out on the ground. Man, some of these Russian conscripts especially are absolutely terrible, all right? And I don't mean any disrespect to any soldier. I respect all soldiers, troops. But some of these guys in Russia have not lived up to the fairy tale at all.
Accompanying them is a flight of Ka-52 attack helicopters to provide escort, security, and fire support once they arrive at their intended target,
which weren't maintained at all.
The trip is 250 kilometers from their starting bases in Belarus, and the helicopters have been in flight for half an hour by the time the news of the invasion is being broadcast around the world. The entire formation is hot on the heels of a massive missile assault on Ukraine in preparation for the invasion. Caliber cruise missiles rain down on strategic targets across the nation, prioritizing known air defense sites. Many air defense radars are destroyed. Many more, however, survive. Yet, under intense missile and electronic warfare attack, Russia achieves the only true victory of the war by completely disrupting Ukraine's extremely dense air defense network. It'll take days for the network to reform itself, but for now, Russia has near uncontested dominance of the airspace above the nation. But
near uncontested, I mean, to a degree in certain areas, but certainly not everywhere. And certainly not as the war progressed. I know that's not what he mentioned there, but I wouldn't say uncontested at all. But hey, who am I?
Such a long-reaching air assault comes with risk. It would only take one battery of Ukrainian air defenses to destroy the entire assault team. So the helicopters fly fast and low, skimming over the treetops. The Vozdusno-Desantny Vojska Rossi, the Russian name for the airborne force. They rely on speed, surprise, and more than a fair bit of bravery to seize victory. And if they accomplish their objective today, the war for Ukraine will be over by the end of the week. Hostomel Airport, also known as Antonov Airport, will allow Russia to fly in.
No, I can't say it would be over within a week. Simply because even if they decimated all of the infrastructure around the air defenses, that means obviously Russia has air superiority. Even if they destroyed all of the artillery systems, all of the munition stockpiles and stuff like that, it would spark a massive interest with NATO. Granted, we're talking hypothetically now, and we've got the benefit of all of the information that's came out within the past year. But one thing's for sure, I think there would have been outrage globally. There is global outrage anyway, but I think help would have been at hand, all right? We wouldn't have seen Russia decimate the whole of Ukraine. I just don't see that of happening, all right? When we look at the fact that Moldova's on the... Moldova would have been hit, Poland would have been hit. There would have been no stop to this, in my personal humble opinion, if they took over Ukraine within a week. So, I don't know what to think about this.
Thousands of troops right on Kyiv's doorstep for a decapitation strike on President Zelensky's regime. As the helicopters penetrate deep into Ukraine, though, the mission planners have made one fatal mistake. Russian troops are not as well equipped as their Western counterparts, and even these elite aviators and paratroopers lack enough night vision equipment to undertake such a risky operation in the dark. Thus, the assault begins right before sunup. But this also gives Ukrainian defenders a clear view of the approaching helicopters. As the choppers near the Dnipro River, they're no longer obscured by tree cover or buildings, giving Ukrainian troops clear lines of fire at the approaching formation. Caught out in the open with no possible means of defending themselves, the helicopter assault immediately comes under fire from heavy machine guns. One of the Mi-8 helicopters is brought under withering cannon fire as bullets riddle the belly of the aircraft and cockpit. Seconds later,
one thing I want to mention from experience, I don't want to. Heavy machine guns, right, play a vital part of many different roles within the military, all right? They can be used in, frontline operations, they can be used in support of, they can be used on vehicles, in the air, in helicopters, you name it, all right? Heavy machine guns can be quite versatile, but you're not going to see too often heavy machine guns trying to actively be a deterrent for, aircraft. Yes, they definitely can be used at that. And if a helicopter was coming towards me and I had to protect my troop of men, I had my GPMG machine gun and I was told to fire it in that direction, I'm getting the rounds down 100%. But what I don't want you to think is that this is going to be the go-to to be able to stop or deter aircraft, because it certainly isn't. Okay, we have other things, ground-to-air missiles, loads of different stuff that are there as a contingency and as the main capability. Heavy machine guns aren't the main capability to counteract air. And I just wanted to clarify that, troops, okay?
Later, it drops out of the sky, smashing into the far riverbank. A Ka-52 attack helicopter tries to suppress the enemy defenders and unleashes a rocket barrage on a heavy machine gun position. However, as it banks away, a soldier using a shoulder-fired Stinger missile lets loose, the missile striking true and blowing the Ka-52 out of the sky.
Now we're talking. This is exactly what you'd want to use. You wouldn't want to be engaging with the machine gun. In case you miss, you're probably going to miss. It's going to be hard to keep it on target, and you don't want that thing turning around and blasting you. Whereas this thing here, Stinger, yeah, you got a good chance of putting that aircraft on the ground. And I mean on the ground in a destructive way.
A few hundred meters away, another soldier inserts a battery coolant unit into the gripstock of his Stinger system. The unit immediately releases high-pressure argon gas, the pressure causing the gas to become super chilled. The gas is routed straight to the seeker of the missile, chilling it to sub-zero temperatures. Now ultra-sensitive to heat, the seeker is easily capable of spotting the telltale thermal signature of Russian helicopter engines even from 1,000 meters away.
Right, didn't know that's how it actually worked. Really, really interesting. This is the thing what I really like with the infographics show. Yes, some of the information might be a little bit here, there, and everywhere, especially with guys like myself. I'm heavily opinionated with certain elements of the military. Doesn't mean I'm always right, but some things I can go, well, that terminology doesn't really fit what you're talking about. But one thing I do like is the level of detail they go into, the mechanics of how things work militarily. We've got loads of geeks on this channel like myself who want to know exactly how this thing works, and they've given a piece of information that I generally didn't know about beforehand. So fantastic that.
Squeezing a trigger, the rocket motor is ignited and the missile leaps into the air. The missile is smart enough to tell the difference between a helicopter's engine and the rapidly cooling exhaust, and course corrects to strike an Mi-8 directly below the gearbox.
Wow. I don't know if that's true, if that's an infographics-ism. I can't honestly tell. If that is true, that's something else, because if you don't realize how it works, guys, I'll annotate it right now for you. So here we are back with my trusted pen that I like to use and annotate things. Let's just say that where can we get this rectangle? So this part here, right, the compartment effectively where you've got your storage, your troops, you've got people in there, you've got the pilots in this area here, you might have a door gunner on the opposite side here, you might have a navigator somewhere in there as well, and various different amounts of munitions, medical supplies, you name it, troops. But where the magic happens in these things, now this isn't as obvious as you'd think, is this part here. Okay, this part here is where pretty much, if you get hit in this direction, in there, the aircraft's going down, okay? Now, these things are pretty versatile. You can get hit all over this place. Yes, you might take a pilot out. You might take, a navigator out. You might take the wheel out. You might take part of the wing out. But there's one thing for sure, you don't want to be hitting up air troops. That's where the aircraft will fail. And when you look at all the armament and stuff like that, that's where they really try and put a lot of effort in protecting this bit here. So, yeah, they're very, very correct with what they've just spoken about there, troops, okay? Little bit of a history lesson, and that's about as much as I know with these aircrafts. I don't know nothing else.
The helicopter immediately begins to spin out of control, crashing into the water at over 150 kilometers an hour seconds later. A cheer erupts from the defenders. Not a single Russian is seen escaping the rapidly sinking wreck. The air assault, however, continues unabated, and 24 helicopters weather the sporadic defensive fire. The Ukrainians have been taken by surprise, despite the CIA's warning that an invasion was imminent. However, not all warnings went unheeded.
I know this central in... The intelligence coming out from America is second to none. But I don't know if... Well, no, I can't say that, actually. What I can say is, yes, there'll have been information given to Ukraine about an imminent attack. But there's one thing for sure. Ukraine's intelligence services aren't going to be that much less in terms of their capability, all right? Intelligence services around the Western world are generally speaking quite good. Granted, Britain, America, France, China, all right, China in particular, their intelligence services are very, very good. The ones that aren't so good are still going to be pretty good, okay, compared to like the average Joe. So would they have known about this without America's cooperation or sharing of information? Yes, they'll have known about this anyway, troops, okay? Maybe you're a spy and you want to let me know on the channel, hey, you know, give me some information, put it in the comments, all that good stuff.
And the airport has had multiple defenses installed over the last 2 weeks. But a traitor has already given away the location of these defenses to Russian intelligence, and the assault nears the airfield. The Ka-52s take the lead. Each attack chopper knows exactly what target to hit and quickly move to neutralize heavy machine guns and troop emplacements with cannon and rocket fire. The Ukrainian defenders manning these positions are taken completely by surprise by the speed of the attack and don't stand a chance. Not all defensive positions are surprised like this, though, and soon the sound of helicopters and explosions have put the garrison troops into action. These aren't Ukrainian regulars, though. These men are mostly reservists who did not expect to be bearing the brunt of an attack by Russia's most elite troops.
I disagree with that. I think reservist troops, although it is understood differently amongst people who haven't served in the military, that reservist troops aren't capable, and they also don't think that they can be involved in the knife edge of it. Well, actually, I've got news for you guys. They are, and they do all the time. They are actively engaged in a lot of things. Reservist, by definition, means that you are a part-time soldier, but be rest assured, there's some part-time soldiers doing full-time work in full-time capacity jobs at the very top of the sword. Okay. It just means that when they come back from operations, if they so wish to take time off, they can take time off, all right? Reservist doesn't necessarily mean any less capable. It used to. It certainly doesn't now. We need to get away from that. Hopefully, I can teach people that reservist does not mean less in caliber. It doesn't, okay? And if we want to talk about, well, some of the people aren't as good as the regular soldiers, granted, yes, okay? Granted, but I'm talking about the guys who are working pretty much full-time as reservists. They're fantastic soldiers. A lot of the Special Forces support group, the Special Forces reserves amongst the world's elite were actually former full-time serving personnel. So you're going to call them not very good because they're in reserves? We need to change the terminology slightly, guys. I don't like the term reserve soldier, okay? It should be part-time commitment soldier or something. But I don't know. We need to change the terminology, I think.
They're initially overwhelmed, but soon the attacking helicopters come under withering ground fire. The Ka-52s wheel over the airfield and launch a fresh volley of rockets and cannon fire, ripping into defenders. In the distance, the sound of the approaching Mi-8s can be heard, and the Ukrainian defenders realize they're about to be overwhelmed. Serhiy Falatyuk, however, refuses to break and run, and brings his 9K-38 Igla to his shoulder, lining up a shot on an attacking Ka-52. The missile strikes true and the marauding helicopter is sent plummeting to the ground. The defenders cheer and are rallied. They won't give this airfield up so easily after all. The Russians were told ground fire would be light and sporadic, but as the main air assault begins to enter the airfield, they're met with fire that is anything but light and sporadic. Captain Ivan Boldyrev is in one of the lead helicopters when suddenly it's strafed by heavy machine gun fire. The helicopter sputters and stalls in the sky, forcing the pilots to bring it to a very hard and unpleasant stop on the grass below. The men inside are thrown about and jarred in their seat harnesses, but all survive the emergency landing. The attack helos have brought enough breathing room for the Mi-8s to set down, disgorging their complement of paratroopers. The men rush to create a defensive perimeter around their choppers, then squad leaders coordinate with unit commanders to expand the perimeter to nearby buildings. They're surrounded by Ukrainians, but the reservists and draftees that make up the defending garrison are no match for the attack helicopters and the elite paratroopers. To drive the point home, a series of explosions follows the...
Don't know how I feel about that. I know this is notionary, but again, we overemphasize the capability of the Russians and we underemphasize the capability of the Ukraine reservists. On the battleground, it kind of evens itself out. Okay, the difference between a high-class soldier and a middle-ground soldier on the battlefield is it evens itself out more than you'd think, believe it or not. It doesn't matter how specialized you are. That specialized skill set doesn't stop a bullet from entering your brain. And it takes any idiot to point and shoot. And I mean that respectfully, okay? I was an idiot pointing and shooting at one point myself, so I can call myself that, troops.
The roar of jet engines as a pair of Russian Su-25s lay waste to another Ukrainian position. The jets don't hang around for long, though. Already Ukrainian fighters are on their way. They've done their job, and the majority of the air assault has successfully landed. The defending troops have been pushed out of the airport in a bloody assault that leaves many of the poorly trained and equipped defenders dead. The Russians take only light casualties. All is going well. And back in Russia, infantry and heavy vehicles are being loaded onto massive Ilyushin Il-76 airlifters. Within hours, the airport will see the first of these big planes land and disgorge hundreds of troops. With 18 in total on their way to bring troops and equipment, by the end of the day, several thousand crack Russian troops will be sitting outside Kyiv. The perimeter is quiet for a short time. An American news crew from CNN is covering the air assault within meters of the Russians. The commander of the air assault even takes time to pass off a few comments. The airport is secure, he says. However, shots soon ring out along the edge of the airport, and the news crew quickly flees. The troops along the perimeter are coming under fire from Ukrainian civilians hiding amongst the trees that ring the airport. Hearing of the air assault...
So the CNN journalists got there quicker than the port.
Local militias have taken upon themselves to quickly respond and lend their aid, only to discover that the defenders had already been overrun. Help is coming, though, as the 3rd Special Purpose Regiment, an elite unit of Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, is rapidly moving to counterattack. These special operators are equipped and trained to NATO standards, having learned directly from American, British, Polish, and French instructors the hard lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan. They're practically chomping at the bit to go after the Russian invaders, but more importantly, they know they have to act quickly. Once the first airlifter lands, their efforts would be too little too late. Ukrainian General Valery Zaluzhny realizes this fact as well and immediately tasks a nearby artillery unit to begin bombardment of the airport.
Yeah, the only thing that we have to be wary of is once that bombardment happens, it renders the airport useless for Ukraine, which they will need, post this successful operation. So, would artillery be used straight away? Now, not that I was a general in the Royal Marines or anything, but I would probably say that's not a good idea to start with. It would be good to keep that piece of infrastructure to be able to allow future operations to run from that facility. Obviously, it's important enough for Russia to want to take it, so it's important enough for Ukraine to want to take it back and keep. Does that make sense?
He also swiftly dispatches the 72nd Mechanized Brigade in a counterattack on the airport. The Russian defenders are soon once more engaged, this time by a well-organized counterattack involving Ukrainian regulars and special forces. The Ukrainians operate under the cover of artillery, with 2 brave helicopter pilots conducting attack runs on the airfields. But the Russians manage to repel the attack with portable anti-tank weapons which tear into the armored vehicles. Automatic grenade launchers further wreak havoc amongst the attacking troops. The Russian defensive perimeter buckles at points, and they're forced to fall back in order to consolidate their position. But they're holding the airport. The time on the arrival of the first Ilyushin is ticking. All the Russians have to do is hold long enough for it to land safely. The Ukrainian force is running into extremely stiff resistance, and without a good fix on enemy positions, the artillery is proving ineffective. They're running out of time, and they know it. If they don't push the Russians out in the next few hours, it'll all be over. The 4th Rapid Reaction Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard has been quickly assembled and dispatched in their armored vehicles, going full speed toward the airport. Police block off civilian roads and make a clear lane for the armored vehicles. An hour later, the 1st Infantry fighting vehicles and tanks of the 4th are arriving at the airport, throwing their weight into the battle. The Russian paratroopers have little heavy equipment to counter this armored threat with, and rely on air cover to deal with the heavy tanks and IFVs of the 4th Rapid Reaction Brigade.
I mean, it's a really good story, you know, I'm enjoying it, but it's not something that I think Russia would have won the war with anyway. If this was like, it's a hypothetical, but they wouldn't have. It just means if this was successful on their behalf, they would have won that local operation within that localized area. But I don't think they would have overthrown anything. You know, you've got the rest of Ukraine to be able to fight as well and to take over. You might have momentarily had success, but it wouldn't have meant utter success for the entire country, you know. So, yeah, a little bit disjointed this.
Nearly out of anti-tank missiles, the Ka-52 attack helicopters and a pair of Russian bombers are all that stands between the defenders and annihilation under the treads of the Ukrainian tanks. More helicopters are destroyed, but under intense cannon and rocket fire, the 4th's tanks and IFVs take heavy losses. Russian air cover can't stick around forever though, as the aircraft are quickly running out of fuel and ordnance. To make matters worse, Ukraine's air force is scrambling to overcome the shock of the attack and the effects of missile strikes against its airfields and hangars. A MiG-29 is screaming toward the airport, and it spells doom for any Russian helicopter or bomber left in the area. Forced to retreat, the paratroopers are now on their own. By now, their defensive perimeter has shrunk even more. The commander of the airborne assault has to make a fateful decision. He cannot possibly guarantee the security of landing aircraft, knowing that it might spell the doom of him and his men. He radios the information via satellite comms back to headquarters. The Aleutians are turned around and head back to Russia. Ukrainian defenders have no idea they've just won the battle for the airport, but the fighting is far from over. The Georgian National Legion has been fighting in Ukraine since 2014, and in 2016 officially made part of the Ukrainian armed forces. Legionnaires now rush to reinforce the attack on the airport. A fresh assault bears
Legionnaires obviously comprising of many different ranks and troops from all over the globe. We know that there's Royal Marines paratroopers from Great Britain. We know that there's many different specialised infanteers and other specialisations within Ukraine, largely from America. So it's like fighting NATO, but not fighting NATO, if that makes sense. And a lot of people don't realise that, but there's a lot of British and American guys and girls fighting in Ukraine at this moment in time, doing a bloody good job as well, thankfully. So I know there's a couple of Royal Marines out there right now. Partly I envy, and another part I'm glad I'm not part of it, if that makes sense. It's a strange thing, war, you know, and you never should wish it on anyone. The fact that Ukraine is undergoing this horrific operation at this moment in time is terrible, troops, okay?
Down on the Russians. They're now out of anti-tank missiles and are running dangerously low on ammunition. Cannon and machine gun fire strafes the buildings of the airport, and the Russians realize they're about to be overrun. There's only one way to avert an even bigger disaster, and that's to retreat to the safety of the woods to the north of the airfield. As the sun begins to set, the paratroopers are ordered to retreat, the men making a mad dash for the safety of the forest outside the airport. Out of ammunition.
One thing's for sure, those Russian troops were taking kit with them, as we've seen in the eastern/northern parts of Ukraine in the original counteroffensive. That wasn't the case. They were ditching kit, they were ditching ammo, they were ditching weapon systems, they were ditching their vehicles just to get the hell out of there. So, yeah, I would have liked to have seen that annotated on this.
Georgian Legion commander Mamuka Mamulashvili hops into a civilian vehicle and runs over retreating paratroopers. As the night falls, the airport finally goes quiet. But the battle for the heart of Ukraine is not over. North of the airport, a giant Russian armored thrust south out of Belarus has run into unexpectedly stiff resistance at Kyiv, a key river crossing held by the Ukrainians. Outnumbered and outgunned, the Ukrainians are forced to destroy the bridge. But many tanks and IFVs have already crossed the river. Despite being under strength, they're ordered to immediately make for Antonov Airport. The column of armored vehicles comes under attack from Ukrainian special forces and partisans, who spring several ambushes along the road to the airport. Nonetheless, the vehicles push through the ambushes, knowing that victory lies in taking and holding the airfield. The Russian paratroopers have had a sleepless few hours to rest after their retreat from the airport, on alert for Ukrainian partisans and special forces who might be on the hunt for them. They had been told Ukraine wouldn't put up much of a fight, but they had never expected such fierce resistance.
I don't think they expected such fierce resistance from the start. I think they thought it was going to be an easy ride for them, literally steamroll over Ukraine. They've been very, very surprised and shocked at the effects that they've had on Ukraine. You've got to remember, you're fighting someone on their home territory, and when you're doing that, you're fighting a very, very formidable force, all right? When the man is and his home is threatened, you're going to see very, very fierce resistance indeed, okay? And that's one thing that took Russia by surprise, 100%.
The sound of approaching friendly vehicles lifts their battered spirits, though. Refitted and re-equipped, the Russians organize an assault on the airport. Preempting the attack, Russian bombers conduct several preparatory strikes, inflicting serious damage to the defenders. Ukrainian air defense networks are only now starting to come back online after being forced to disperse from pre-war positions or face destruction. Russia still enjoys the ability to use close air support and takes full advantage of the fact, bringing withering fire down on the airport's defenders. The assault breaks on the airport with renewed vigor, and a fresh wave of paratroopers skirts Ukrainian positions to land more troops. The tide is turning, and the Ukrainian defenders can't hold under the intense pressure of the assault. Forced to retreat, Ukraine once more calls on its artillery, but this time not to attack the Russians, but to pound the runways of the airport. The big guns belch out heavy shells that smash the concrete runways to
The big guns belch out. Oh, what terminology. I love it, man.
Pieces. And after an hour of bombardment, the runways are a mess of craters and debris. The Ukrainians are forced to cede the airport to the overwhelming Russian assault, but they have won the battle for Antonov by default. With the runways out of commission, no troops can be ferried here, making the operation to create the air bridge and quickly win the war a failed one. A parallel assault on nearby Vasilkiv airfield also ends in frustration for the Russians and leaves them with no hope of flying troops and resupply in. The greater battle for Kyiv has now begun and will rage for the next month, but by the end of it, Ukraine will emerge victorious. The war will be decided in the east in the coming months, maybe years, but not within days as Russia foolishly believed it could be.
Not within days as Russia foolishly believed it could be. Very, very true. Troops, great video. Go show them support. Original videos in the description. Hopefully you enjoyed what I had to say today. If you want to see uncensored, ad-free content on a platform that is growing by the week, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It's a fantastic platform. You don't have to pledge what it says on there. It pledge as little as you want, okay? It costs literally less than a coffee if you want to support their troops. So please consider that. It's really important, okay? I'm putting some great alternative content out there that I just can't put out on this platform, and it's really good. So please consider just having a look. If you don't like it, then cancel, okay? That's all I'm saying. But troops, thank you for being here. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe wherever you are. Stay safe. I'll see you soon. If you don't hear from me before Christmas, have a good Christmas wherever you are, troops. And I'll see you very, very soon. Peace.